Live on WFLA Now. This is Run for Fun with running enthusiast Lee Spann.
All right, welcome back to the Stream Center here at WFLA Now for this week's episode of Run for Fun. We designed this show to show you the path to enjoying the sport of running. To be a real part of a healthy lifestyle, you have to like doing it. It's not always about pushing yourself to the limit. It can be about showing up every day, having fun on the run, even on the hard days. So I'm your host, Lee Spann. I'm a meteorologist here at WFLA in Tampa, but I'm also an avid runner, and it took me a really long time to learn to love the sport, not just think of it as sort of a means to an end, whether for a race or for staying healthy. So I wanted to pass along some of the things that I have learned, because as we all know, the one thing runners love is to recruit more running addicts. And that's what the first person that started changing my view on it was my coach, Coach Maria. We just saw each other this weekend.
I know. We had such a fun weekend. I haven't been home since Friday. I've been just running, just playing.
So we had St. Pete Run Fest, which is a very, it was good that they called it a fest, because it is a festival at the end. It's fun to run through downtown St. Petersburg. You see all the sights.
Yes. And they have a good vibe. It's a great vibe race.
Yes.
We had a lot of fun. It was really hot.
It was really, so you know when you say it's a fun race and it was that hot,
just have to adjust your expectations. Like, I ran easy pace, and easy pace wasn't easy enough. I was like, what is going on? But you know, when you adjust your expectations, and like, I had people coming up to me that morning being like, Coach, what's my pace plan? I'm like, we're not racing today. Today is not a race day. And I think what people don't understand is, like, if I give you a pace plan on a day like that, you actually have more of a chance of failing, because I'm just doing a guesstimate on what I think you can do, and your body might not want to do that in the heat.
Yes.
So I don't know what everybody's genetics is and every different. So sometimes it's better to just adjust your expectations and go hang out with the drag queen that's on that course, because that was what I did.
Who has some very colorful language for us.
Oh, he was hilarious.
Yes.
It was funny.
So it was Sunday was record heat in the Tampa Bay area, and Saturday. So if it felt like it was the hottest day, then that's because it was. It was the hottest day on that day.
Inside out, it felt hot.
But we did get to talk to some folks from our Strava Run group who are out there running as well. So for those of you who don't know, Strava is a free app that you can download on your phone so that you can keep up with all your running statistics and things like that. And yeah, it does all of that. But we are using it as a social media, and we have a group called WFLA Run for Fun with 236 members now. And so we ask you to download the app and put it on your phone, look for the clubs, look for the groups, and then join us, because not only is it a way to ask questions, which that was how I first started really learning to love running, was because I said, why is this happening? Why is this happening? And inevitably somebody knows why that's happening, and then you feel better.
Hopefully they know the right answer.
Well, they know what's happening. And so, but we are also working together with our group to train, and Maria is being very gracious with her knowledge and her time. We're getting ready for the BDR Safety Harbor Race, which is on January 20th. So tell people how they can train along with us and join us.
I have designed a program that's like, it's going to be 3 days a week to start, and we're going to go up to 4 days a week. And last week we did a time trial that you guys can use, and I told you how to use that time trial for your workouts this week. And you just get to have one workout a week, and then learn your easy pace and train for a race with a bunch of other people. And then when you get to BDR, you can come hang out with us at our tent. And
it is also another big party at the end.
Yes.
So it's a big celebration of not only your accomplishment.
And we'll come cheer you on.
Yes, but also the weeks and weeks of training. So please join in, check in on the timeline, and Maria will post that week. And so kind of leading into today's topic, how do you train a bunch of people all using the same training schedule like that?
Well, we do a lot of effort-based stuff. Last time I did it with the group, we did only effort-based, but this time I felt like we could do a little bit more. So we added the time trial, and then I kind of work through, the slow running. We talked about that in a couple in one of our first couple of podcasts, and we haven't talked about it in a while. So I wanted to bring Brian on today so we could talk more about how important your easy run is, and talk about heart rate training. And, there's only there's only so many people that will really listen to me on this, and Brian's one of them. He knows more than me on this issue. So,
all right, so Brian is Dr. Brian Fulham, who's a sports podiatrist, also a running coach. People go to you for all of their lower extremity issues, but you also train people using heart rate rather than go out at this speed or this distance. So why is that important, and why is zone 2 so important?
It's a great question. So the zones are based on heart rate, which correlates well to what's called your VO2 max. VO2 max is the amount of oxygen that your body can uptake and utilize, and you can train that and make it better. So zone 2 for heart rate is between 60 and 70% of your max heart rate. And it's counterintuitive to say this. And most runners that want to be good are type A personalities, and you have that no pain, no gain mentality. And to tell people if you train slower, you're going to race faster is a really hard concept to get. And some people never get it. But coaching in the high schools, even I've found it where I've had kids where they never had if they don't have any background, they never ran before. For a coach, that's ideal. You don't have to break bad habits.
Absolutely.
But then once they start to get a little better, they're on Strava or looking at people's times, and this guy's running this faster in their training runs, and they start running faster, and then it ends up hurting their performance. So it's it takes a lot of discipline. And with the heart rate, I would tell my athletes that I'm coaching, wear your heart rate monitor on your easy days. I don't care what your heart rate is on your hard days. It's supposed to be harder.
Yeah.
Unless we're looking at a specific tempo to try to hit a certain rate. But I think running easy on your easy days is more important than running hard on your harder days if you want to looking at performance.
And I think that's what people get confused about, because they think the only one that matters is the fast one, which in fact that's the one that matters the least, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes, you still have to run fast to be fast, but this percentage is so much smaller. Let's start from the beginning though, Brian. Like, talk to them about do you remember the test you gave me to figure out what my max heart rate was?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was you did the 5 minutes. Was it you did multiple runs?
It was 2 800s.
Okay, so that comes from Jack Daniels.
Okay, yeah.
So Jack Daniels is a PhD. He did a lot of important research on VO2 max, and his tables are excellent.
And not
I use
not
Jack
a bourbon.
Daniels.
No.
Not a bourbon.
No,
I use
not Jack Daniels
tables
the
a
whiskey.
lot. Yeah.
But that's another way for you to figure out what your easy pace should be. So if you're not a heart rate person, Jack Daniels takes your paces in a race. So if you ran a 5K or half marathon or whatever race you ran, or a time trial, you can go look at Jack Daniels tables, and it'll tell you what an approximation of what your VO2 max is, and he'll give you your paces for every run, your easy runs, your tempo runs, your intervals.
The only struggle with that is you have to, if it's a hot day, you have to use that number, not your PR number.
Right.
You have to use the conditions. So that's why heart rate, I think, is a little bit better. But there's so many formulas on how to use heart rate and how to get the heart rate. And so, like, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but Brian did coach me for a while. He's a great coach, and we did a lot with heart rate. And I remember the first thing he did was we found my heart rate max, which ended up being about 201, I think. And we did it, I think we did an 800.
And then a minute
at 90%.
between.
Yeah, 90%. And then we took a minute rest, and then we did an 800 all out.
And you're using what to, because I have a Garmin, but you're saying, should you actually wear the chest strap? Is that more?
Chest strap.
Okay.
More
But
accurate.
even after, so this is, Jack Daniels was before heart rates were on your wrist and even straps. So it was just as soon as you finish, you check your heart rate for 15 seconds, multiply it by 4, and that's your max heart rate. So yeah, I can, there was a lot of workouts where I'm finishing my interval and my fingers are going to my wrist or my neck to see what my heart rate is.
Yep. And the thing about zone 2, it's really important at building your aerobic capacity, because we talked about this in our on our early session, in our early few podcasts. Like, what is the reason why you can't run as fast as you can run a 100-meter dash?
Right.
For over the long haul. Well, that's because your aerobic capacity is not big enough to carry you that speed for longer. So you have to build that, and that takes years, right? So if you're training in zone 4 or zone 5, you're not building that aerobic capacity underneath you.
So let's start even. So zone 1 would be like you're sitting on your couch. right?
it's walking.
Or walking.
Okay,
walking.
so,
Yeah.
so one is walking. So
Mhm.
and 5 and to go 5 or 6. What-
5.
5 is all out. Is that
Anaerobic sprinting as hard as
Yeah.
you can is zone 5,
so?
essentially.
And so what would be zone 2? What am I looking for at zone 2?
Conversational pace is, I think, the best. If you're not wearing a heart rate monitor, you should be able to speak in complete sentences.
Like, except if you're Petra and Michael Wilsey, because they can talk.
At any
They
pace.
can talk at zone 5 like they're doing nothing. And I'm like, guys, I look at your heart rate and you got to slow down.
Well,
They've gotten so good at it. But when I first started coaching them, they're like, we're talking. I'm like, you guys never stop talking.
You never stop. So one of the things you told early on in this show, we were training a young man from our newsroom who'd never run before, and you said be able to sing the ABCs.
I think singing is more accurate.
Sing the ABCs because there's not a lot of space and there's no
And
breaks.
it's not like A, B, C, D, E.
Right,
It's not like
right,
that. You're
right.
singing the whole ABCs like you're teaching a child.
Right.
And then you're in your right zone.
Then you're in your right zone. But that is very different for different people.
Yes.
Absolutely.
The speed would end up being very different.
And some people
Absolutely.
can't sing either, so that's kind of hard.
And the fitter you get, the faster you will get in zone 2 too. So I think that's one aspect that people have to understand. And it's not just training aerobic capacity; it's also muscle fibers. So your fast twitch muscle fibers, the ones that allow you to sprint, they only take about 3 weeks to get going. Your slow twitch muscle fibers take months and months to train. So that's where that easy running is training those slow twitch muscle fibers, which is the majority of what we're using. And that aerobic ability too is in zone 2 as well. So, it's aerobic versus anaerobic. So anaerobic lack of oxygen is the sprinting part. And the other great part about zone 2 training is it will teach your body to burn fat better. So you have a lot more fat to burn. So the way to think about fat versus carbohydrates, when we run a marathon, when we bonk, typically it's because our body isn't burning fat as well as it should, and we've run out of sugar or glycogen.
Yep.
So glycogen is a very small battery in terms of driving our body. And when you get to about 20 miles, that's typically when people are going to bonk. That's when you've run out of glycogen. If you do more zone 2 training and stay in that zone, you will teach your body to burn the fat better,
More efficiently.
and then you're less likely to bonk. So that's, with zone 2, there's so many things that are good about it. I have a few notes. Just
Okay,
zone 2 reduces your injury risk and you recover faster from your workout. So if you're running in zone 3, you're working harder than you should, and your body's not going to recover. That's going to increase your risk of injury. It's counterintuitive too for some people if they're not used to the sport to say, well, how am I running and I'm recovering? But it's really the effort that you're running at, and you will recover at an easier pace. When I was in college, I was on a pretty good team, and we had probably about 10 guys that could break 31 minutes for 10K. So that's sub 5-minute pace. And we ran most of our distance runs at 7:30 pace.
Yeah.
7 to 7:30 pace. So 2 minutes slower per mile than our 10K pace is what we did most of our runs on. 100 miles a week.
Yeah.
100 miles
Well,
a week.
because when you're running in zone 2, you can run more miles because you recover quicker.
Yeah.
And that's, sometimes people ask me, how is that making you, if they're not trying to run for a race or just trying to exercise, I'm like, you can get out there and run so much more, and they're in that burning their calorie, whatever the thing is that you're trying to do that's not do the race. If you're just getting out there and you're being consistent, the only way to be consistent and not be sore or hurt is to not run at the full effort all the time.
Yeah, and when you're running your long runs at marathon pace, which a lot of people love to do, they're like, if I can run 20 miles at marathon pace, then I'm definitely going to be able to run 26. Unfortunately, what you're training your body to do is what Brian was talking about. You're training your body to hit a wall at 18 because your body only knows how to burn carbohydrates. So when those carbohydrates are gone, you're done, and that's the wall. You're actually training yourself to hit it, to drive yourself right into it. So that's where zone 2 is so important. We got to get that aerobic capacity there and the fat burning more efficient. So they're working together because we really want to be metabolically adaptable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Florida throws another
Yes.
Yeah.
kink into the armor because the heat and the humidity. And Maria's great about this. Check those Dupoint those Dupoint calculators, and adjust your pace accordingly.
They have a lot of them out now, and that Strava has an app now called Do Me.
I have that as part of my. You can add that.
That is my calculator that I've been using for 15 years. I'm like, finally.
Yeah, so now on my Strava, it will say what my adjusted pace is for any workout I do based on the dew point.
Yep. So it's the same calculator we've always used.
But it's as the meteorologist first, before I was ever running, I was a meteorologist. Having anyone even understand what the dew point is, much less be able to use it and efficiently.
Are good friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's true. I mean, I had no idea to think even about dew point humidity I'd look at, but Maria was the one that turned me on to that because I grew up in the Northeast. You get, upstate New York, you get humidity three days of the year, and then the rest of the year it snows. Yeah. So, not used to that thought process.
And that plays a role in your heart rate too.
Right.
With like dehydration and all that stuff. I think where I struggle as a coach in zone 2 training, I don't think people understand the variables that are around zone 2. Can you tell me some about that? Like when it can be harder and easier to run in zone 2?
Yeah, I think if you've done a workout the day before or you ran a race the day before, that's going to make it harder. I think the humidity is going to make it harder. I think your nutrition. Are you energy deficient? Are you eating enough calories? Did you did a workout the day before? Or did you get some carbs and protein into you within that first half hour? Mm-hmm. Your body will super compensate after a workout and rebuild and help you recover if you get it within that first half hour. Mm-hmm. Or did you go home and just have macaroni and cheese and because it's easy and you didn't have any protein,
or had a bunch of alcohol after your race?
Right. That's another big negative. Yeah. When you drink after a workout, when you go to bed, your body doesn't release human growth hormone because the alcohol suppresses that. So then you haven't recovered from your workout. When you just one craft beer is basically essentially like you didn't do a workout that day because you're not going to recover from it and you're not going to get the benefits from it. Not to throw a wet blanket on
I know it is a wet blanket.
It is. I know.
But okay, well let's. So, what would you suggest that as a celebration when you do have a really good workout or a really good race? Is there a time where we could say if we eat the protein, we eat the carbs, then can we have a glass of champagne?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's good to live like a monk.
Right.
I think that's it. You pick your celebratory times after a race for sure. Yeah. You should.
Because you're gonna rest anyway.
And it's a social event too.
And you got to get your protein and your carbohydrates back in first. And then you can do it.
Okay.
Yes.
It's still not great, but it's better to do it that way than to not eat. And then,
Because I always feel like my body is starving for something. And so if I put the drink in first, you kind of get that tipsy headedness so quickly. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing. Like if you were to put the good stuff in, it would also, quickly satisfy all the things that you need for that. And then you can enjoy it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then if you're not eating enough carbohydrates, it's going to be very difficult to run in zone 2.
Yeah.
It's very difficult because you're primarily using fat at that point, and that's just a harder source of energy for your body. So you're always going to be working harder. So make sure you're eating enough carbohydrates. You're not going to be fat adapted if you don't. It's not going to work.
Yeah, and just the calories, period. People don't realize, and I've seen it with my high school kids that I coached, they're not trying to cut calories, but they have to be at school at 7 o'clock in the morning, so they don't eat breakfast.
Yep.
Then school lunch is horrible. Mm-hmm. So one of my runners that I coached, he had run 18 minutes for 5K in the spring his junior year in a road race, and he I expected him to run in the 17s in cross country. In his first couple of races, he's running 20 minutes, and I asked him to track his calories. The first day, I said, that's enough. He 1,500 calories he had.
Oh my
So there's a teenager running 60 miles a week. He loved CrossFit. He's working out all the time. He's a really smart kid. He's studying. 1,500 calories that day.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm glad that your example was a man.
Yeah.
But do you feel like we often say this is a female problem, females don't eat enough, but
no, it's a male problem too. I have a lot of males that struggle with it.
Right, and I was coaching the boys and the girls teams, and it would just be a general blanket statement to my athletes. You guys have to eat more. I can guarantee you there's no one on this team that's eating too much.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and Matt Fitzgerald will say he'd rather have somebody eating too much and have 5 pounds extra on them running well
Absolutely.
than to have somebody that's under eating and not performing, because it really damages your body, and it takes a long time to get your body back to healthy. You have to run less and eat more
Right.
for a very long extended period of time to get back from that.
And why would eating more or eating less, let's say, keep you out of zone 2? That's since we're correlating back to this episode.
Do you want
Just
to?
makes it harder to
Your
do
body's
that
working
kind of
harder.
run, and your body's going to have to work harder, and your heart rate's going to go up, and then you're going to have to even walk to stay in zone 2 if you don't have enough.
And you're not recovering.
There's
You
no
can't recover.
gas in the car.
Okay.
Essentially is really what it is, and it's that's the biggest thing I will tell people when they say, I'm doing all the workouts, how come I'm not getting faster? Nutrition and sleep.
Yeah.
If you're not sleeping at least 7.5 hours, your body's not recovering. So
Not happening.
Sleep cycles are about 90 minutes typically, and every 90 minutes you go into REM. REM is where your body restores itself and recovers, and you get all that good stuff with the human growth hormone getting released, and you're recovering. So if you have 7.5 hours, you're getting 5 REM cycles. Less than 7.5 hours, you're only getting 4 REM cycles. I mean, ideally, it's 9 hours is really
Yeah,
what you want to get.
which
So you
is
get 6 REM
Not
cycles.
reasonable for everybody,
Yeah,
but
Most
yeah.
people, it's difficult
Right.
to do, but that's the effort you have to make if
If performance is your priority.
yes. So you can either be a person that wants to be better at performing, or you could be a person that's committed to performing better. And everyone has enough time to do the things that they need to do. No one's too busy. It's a matter of what you prioritize and what you want to go, and you can make the effort to eat better, and you can make the effort to get more sleep.
My question is, when you're trying to, so say you're going out and your goal is to run zone 2.
Yes.
What do you look at average heart rate over the whole run, or are you trying, because you can run average heart rate in zone 2 but be in zone 4? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Is that okay or not okay?
I mean, I think
Like if you're running your interval too fast, you know what I'm saying? Like if
Yeah.
you're running and your heart rate is too high when you're running,
Right.
and then you stop and walk to get it to go lower.
right.
Like, do you,
I mean, when I was doing the training myself, where I was trying to do all of my easy runs below zone 3, and I was living in a hilly area in Connecticut, I did have to walk, and it was, for me, I set an alarm on my polar monitor. When I went into zone 3, that alarm went off, and I immediately would slow down or walk or whatever I had to do.
okay.
And I did that training for about 12 weeks and just base training for about 12 weeks. And after about 6 weeks, I didn't have to walk anymore. And I was doing a tempo run every week. And that tempo run at the same heart rate, a 10-mile tempo run, I ran a minute a mile faster, 12 weeks of basically just doing zone training with 1 or 2 tempo runs a week.
That's what I was about to get you to transition to, is that if you do this, which is hard and you have to think about it, what is that performance
Sure.
goal? I mean, that yes, you're not trying to run very slow on the races.
Right.
You're trying to go fast in the races. So how does that correlate and how does that work?
Yeah, one of the great things about zone 2 is it's 100% aerobic. And when you're completely aerobic, your heart muscle is going to get stronger. So now it will pump more blood, which will provide more oxygen to your muscles and your tissues, enabling you to run faster. Just by being in zone 2, your heart's going to get stronger. So that's going to enable you to run faster at a lower heart rate. You're going to develop more capillaries. More capillaries, blood vessels delivering more oxygen and more blood to the muscles is also going to make you faster. You'll have fewer injuries if you run more in zone 2, because that's the winner of the race typically, is the person who didn't get injured, who had more training. So who's going to run faster? The guy that runs 365 days a year, or the person who's injured half the year and does better workouts the other half?
Absolutely.
So it's the combination of all those factors, and the developing of your heart muscle getting stronger, the development of capillaries. There's markers in your blood for that, but we don't feel that. We don't notice that. But once you stay committed to that training, you'll be able to be in zone 2 at a faster pace, because everything is getting stronger and better in your body.
And I think that's what, can seem counterintuitive, especially to someone who's just now getting into it, you think the faster I run, the faster I should be able to run a race. And that is true when you're starting out. But if you do, but we're talking about trying to get people to run until they're 90 or for the rest of their life, or just be a part of it, of a healthier lifestyle. And this is the only way to do that, to not burn out and not stop this exercise.
Absolutely. And I think if you're someone who doesn't care about performance as much and you just want to run, you'll burn more calories if you run faster.
Yeah, true.
You really
do.
will. So,
and that's like what I call we call recreational runner versus, and then you talk like a diet and exerciser versus an eat to performer. There's very different. They're very different. And you just can't have both.
No.
It's very difficult to have both.
It is.
But even what you're saying is that you're training your heart to be a healthier heart by running slow. And if someone's just trying to be healthier,
absolutely,
then that is helping them by being slow, not just because they're not running races, but they're just overall getting a better healthy heart.
Right.
Yeah. But you do burn calories faster when you go faster.
Right.
So
of course,
if it's a calories in, calories out thing, yes. But I would still argue, I just read this book, Outlive, that I was telling you about. He talks a lot about zone 2 training and how good it is for your cortisol levels and for your meditation and for your body, for your heart to be stronger, just from an overall perspective of, he's not a runner, he's a doctor. And he was looking at the history of diseases that we have in this country. And he says we have we lack zone 2 training. He equates it to everything. So I would even say, even if you are a diet and exerciser and you're worried about calories in, calories out, still incorporate some zone 2 training in your into your routine.
Yeah, I think the 80-20 is something to live by.
It's a gold standard.
It is.
So
it is.
We talk about this on other shows, but explain the 80-20 in case.
Yeah, I mean, for running, 80% of your runs are easy and 20% are a harder workout. But that's living your life by that principle at everything you do. There's science behind it. It's efficient. It's the best way for our bodies to function. So, that's where I would say, if you're recreational, you got to have that easy running, I think, even then, for your health.
Yeah. So if somebody has a hard workout and their heart rate is elevated, that obviously means they're not recovered yet.
Right.
If they cannot run in zone 2, would you suggest cross training in zone 2?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Like biking or swimming that you can keep your heart rate low.
Absolutely. Elliptico. Yeah. No, without a doubt. I think, if it's not fun, right? So
no, it's not fun. All runners want to run more.
So that's where that cross training, I think, is real good to do. And if you watch the Blue Zones on Netflix and you see it's
that was great.
That's a lot of that is zone 1 and 2 training. The walking, if they're
uphill,
when they're walking uphill, they're probably in zone 2.
Yeah,
during it, and I think that's. As I'm about to turn 60 next year, so you start to think about mortality.
We gotta have a
and
party.
Things like that.
Ryan Fulham party, 60.
I know. So I think about that myself. The last month I started riding my bike to my office. So it's only about
that's good.
Yeah, it's about 6 miles. So I'm
that's great.
12 miles a day.
That's
so
great.
Instead of sitting in the car for 15 minutes, I ride my bike for 30 minutes.
I'll start doing that. I'll start riding my bike from Jacksonville to Tampa.
I think that's a whole different workout.
That's not overdoing it at all. I mean, that would be awesome.
I don't think you're getting the spirit of what Brian is saying.
No, but what I do tell my runners a lot, because they get really frustrated with me about this. Like even to the point where I've kind of backed off on it a little bit, because I'm like, well, if it's just easy by feel and you're breathing through your nose, let's not focus on your heart rate so much. Because Florida, it's very difficult in Florida. And
it is.
It's not fun to walk every day either. So we have to have a common, a commonality here that we're gonna get through it. But I will say, like, if you're doing the other things correctly, like if you're sleeping enough and you're eating enough and you're really like not busting out your workout, because I'd even argue that if you're running too hard on your workout, that's why you're not recovered the next day, then you can actually run in zone 2 more. So like if that's a priority to you and that you really want to run, then take those other things and really focus on it. Really focus on the sleep, focus on making sure you're in the right paces. Like Brian was so great with me on the track when he was working with me on the track. He never was like, he never is the person that's going to be like, run harder. And I'm like, he's always stay in your zone. So I learned a lot of that from him, but there is an amazing discipline that comes with following a prescribed pace and not blowing it out.
Yeah. So you said you eventually got to where, when you were trying to do zone 2 training, that you eventually got to be able to run in zone 2.
Absolutely.
Is that because you learned how to run slower, or so
you have to train your body to run slower? You know, being someone that had been, you know, close to elite myself, and then to have to walk on a run is humbling. And it is. It's very difficult. And I would be embarrassed. I'd be like, I hope no one sees me walking, right? I'm on a run.
That was me on Sunday.
I mean, you know, so everyone has that ego. It's hard. It's difficult, but eventually you see the benefit of it. And to think that I started running races when I was 8 years old, and it took me till 40 almost, where I said, you know what? I would go to my track workouts with my track club, and I would let guys go. I would be the last guy in my group. And then when we raced, I was beating those guys.
Yeah.
So that justified it for me, but it's very difficult even in a workout because we're all competitive.
Yeah.
And I see that. And then what I'll do sometimes is I don't harp on the zone 2 and tell people they have to walk. But 2 weeks ago, we did a workout with my adult group, and we did 400s. I have a 400-meter cinder path loop that we use. And a couple of them got carried away. They felt good. They ran faster than they probably should have. They were probably in zone 5.
Yep.
And afterwards, I told both of them, I said, your next 2 days have to be so slow to recover from what you did today. And so specifically, you know, I was, okay, you ran harder than you should have, because I don't want people in zone 5 most of the time.
No.
Zone 3 at the most. And I don't think it's good to go to the well and run as hard as you can when you're running a speed workout, almost ever.
Yeah, it's very rare.
Maybe a couple of times a year, maybe once in the middle of your cycle to get your body used to that uncomfortable feeling that you might feel in a race. But normally I don't think you want to go there. And the way I think about it is, you know, whatever your lactate threshold is, you always want to stay below it. So lactate threshold is a measurement of your body's a percentage of your VO2 max. And when you go over your lactate threshold, your body will start to produce more lactate, which we used to call it lactic acid. You're going to get lactic acid in your muscles. It's lactate is really the proper terminology now we know from the science. But once your body starts building lactate, you're going to slow down. That's that feeling like, oh my God, I hit the wall. That's lactate buildup in your muscles, which you can't overcome. You have to clear that before your muscles are going to work properly again.
And if you do that in a workout, you just didn't gain anything.
You
from the
did.
workout.
So if you stay below that number, though, you'll keep pushing up on your lactate threshold and make it higher, and then you'll be able to run faster at the same heart rate with the same effort.
Yeah, that's what he was saying about the zone 2 training. Like once you're doing it, you naturally can run faster at the same
heart rate.
So if your zone 2 will go a little bit higher. So then you're like, oh, I can run a little bit faster on my easy days.
And that pushes up from the bottom for all your paces. Yeah. That's not just helping your zone 2, that's helping your race pace too. So, and that's counterintuitive. And sometimes I would have, you know, one of my boys that I coached at Dunedin, his father ran in college. And he said to me, when are they going to run race pace stuff? I'm like, well, they do strides. So we do five times 100-meter stride.
That's it. We do strides
barefoot,
a lot. Yeah.
on the grass. 3 or 4 times a week, and that's the faster running. You know, so we'll touch on it more when we get 3 or 4 weeks out from our goal race. But for the most part, we're doing tempo, threshold, in zone 2.
Yep.
That's what most of my training is going to be.
So that brings up a really good question: is when did the science come to this? Because clearly, you know, that father was like, that's not how we train. That's not how, you know. So when did we start learning?
More in the 80s and 90s, I think. Jack Daniels, you know. But it's interesting, you know. Peter Snell was the Olympic champion in the 800 meters and the 1500 meters from New Zealand. His coach was Arthur Lydiard. Arthur Lydiard had everything right. He was zone 2 training, but he didn't call it zone 2 training.
No.
And
said slow down.
And he was a good runner when he was younger, and he tried things out himself. So he thought, let me run 200 miles in a week and see how my body responds to that. And he didn't think it responded very well. So Peter Snell was an 800-meter runner that Arthur Lydiard coached, and he had Peter Snell running 100 miles a week. There's almost no 800-meter runners in the world right now that would run 100 miles a week, but that zone 2 training that Peter Snell did enabled him to run 144
Yeah.
for 800 meters.
And in the 90s, we went away from that.
We did.
We went away from that. There was, who wrote the book that was run less, run faster?
Yeah. I mean, Runner's World was kind of big into that
in
too.
the
so
90s.
it was late 80s.
And we started doing that, and actually our elite runners got slower.
Absolutely. And even so the peak of U.S. men's marathoning is 1983 Boston Marathon. We had 5 American males under 211. I don't think we have that right now.
No.
I don't think we have 5 Americans under 211 right now.
So why don't they go back to training the old
They have
way?
been.
They have been.
Okay.
They have been. They're going back, but I think there was a lot of damage done.
Yeah.
So we are learning more. We're learning more about recovery. We're learning more every day.
Yeah.
The science is always changing, but it really is the gold standard in how we train our elite athletes.
Yeah.
More
Right. I was going to
miles,
say, because if they start training that way and people see that, the man that just won the Boston Marathon trains really slowly, then we won't be embarrassed when our slow runs are
Well,
this,
except for what happens is their slow run
Well-
still looks really fast to us. So we're like,
Kipchoge's still running 5:30 pace, but that's easy for him.
You're like,
Yeah.
wait a second, that's 8:30. So they're like, well, yeah, I mean, but 8:30 pace for Shalane Flanagan is like so slow,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Compared to what she can run. So I don't know. It's all relative, right?
when I first started with Maria, and there would be these recovery days, and that's as slow as you can go for a certain amount of minutes. I was like, can I just wear a sign that says this is my recovery pace? So that, because I was like, when I would run past someone, I'd be like, I'm so embarrassed that I'm
Right.
going so
Yeah.
slow. That it's like, if I could just tell them, like, I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed
Coach
to be
says
doing.
I'm supposed
Right.
to run
That's just
slow today.
that
That's
should
the
be your
shirt I
shirt.
need.
Yes.
Coach says.
Coach says I'm
Coach
supposed
says zone 2.
Right.
Yeah, and so, but I do think that you just said this is part of the plan.
Yes.
And you didn't care what someone on Strava said or saw. It was my plan is my plan, and this is what today calls for. And I feel like if we could all just do that a little bit more.
Well, I wish we
where
would
that's-
do that more, just because I still go to these run groups and I'm like still the only one running slowly. And I'm like, why do we not understand this yet? Like, I want it to be common knowledge now that our easy runs need to be slower. Like it just is so important, and people don't understand it. And I feel like I have been preaching this now for how many years have I been coaching? Like 19. And I'm like, what is going on? It's still, it's getting better.
Right.
It is getting better.
The fact that anyone's talking about the Dupoint makes me happy. I mean,
I know. But I feel like I've been saying this a lot of years.
I know.
It's true. No, it's the same repetitive pattern typically too. Once people start to get better, they think to keep getting better, you have to run faster, you have to run harder, you have to run more.
Yeah, it's easy to get fast at first.
You improve significantly.
You can do anything you want when you're just starting running.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're going to get better.
Don't worry about zone 2
Yeah.
if you're just starting.
But then when you get in a couple years in and you really want to improve and you want to keep this for a lifestyle, you really do have to do it in a certain way.
Right. And so how many years have you been running? Right.
Oh, yeah, almost 50.
Yeah.
Yeah, my first race was 1974.
And
And what's your 5K PR again?
14:25, but 40 years
Amazing.
ago.
Amazing.
I don't know.
so do you feel like now that you really transitioned into this zone 2, do you feel like you have fewer injuries than when you were sprinting a lot more?
I was lucky. I think one of the things, advantages, and this has been proven out in studies now, people that play ball sports have fewer injuries when they get older.
Really?
Yeah. So Stanford University, they did a study in it, and they interviewed every athlete that was at USA Nationals one year in track and field. So 500-600 runners they interviewed, and it was about a significant amount. I think 70% less injuries from the ball sport group, particularly stress fractures.
That's
So
interesting because
it's that
a lot of
side
times
to side movement.
Oh, and you're jumping a lot, so that would be
Those
kinda
things are good,
surprising.
but really the biggest impact is the side to side movement activates your gluteus medius and your gluteus minimus, and those are the pelvic stabilizers. And when people are in my office, sometimes they come in for a foot problem, and I give them hip exercises, and they're like, "Why are we not even looking at the foot?"
Yeah.
And it's because those pelvic stabilizers control everything that goes on down below. So, that's so important to make sure those muscles are doing their job, and that's going to help prevent injuries. And I grew up playing baseball and basketball until I was in high school, and I think
played the flute. What does that mean?
So
I played a mean flute, Brian.
Yeah,
I bet.
yeah.
I bet that has something to do with it.
But
your fingers are very nimble. And even before this, we started recording today, I said, "Hey guys, I'm still having some hamstring issues," and you said,
Yeah.
do the side to side motions to get better. And I go, no, that's not my problem. My problem is my hamstring.
yeah.
But you're saying that
It is almost a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
It's a lot of injuries are the
And
hips.
sometimes if you're having pain in the hamstring, it's coming from the sciatic nerve because the glute muscles aren't doing their job, and not
Still a glute
specifically from the hamstring muscle
all the
itself.
glutes. Yeah.
Even though it hurts there, it's
Yeah.
more from the nerve. So yeah, the glute work I think is something that everybody should do.
Definitely.
So explain again to people, give them one reason to stay in zone 2 and how to stay there. Like give them one reason why, if they take away from this podcast, what do they need to know?
Yeah, I think if you're a person who wants to be a healthier person, and I'll give you two reasons. If you want to run faster in your races and you want to be a healthier person, run in zone 2 more.
Zone 2 more.
Yeah.
And if you can't run there at first, cross train there. Eventually you'll be able to. Check the ego at the door, which is very difficult. It's very difficult to do. I know Chris McCaffrey does it often, and he's had some elite runners that have had to walk, and it's frustrating at first, but it's short-lived.
It is.
Short-lived frustration for long-term gains.
And then of course, let's talk about one more time with the Dupoint. That's going to make it that much harder. So do you give people leeway if they get into the zone 3 in July and in the summer? I mean,
it's very difficult to run in zone 2 in July and August.
Yeah.
Like that is very difficult. I have found with my own clients that cross training more in the summer, less speed in the summer. Yeah. I think what happens though when we do that is people get really bored, and there's nothing fancy about running slow. There's nothing like. But I would say, maybe it's just because I'm getting older. I'm like, it's meditative. I put on you can put on a podcast. You can distract yourself in a way that everything else in life is so hard. Like, why does your run need to be hard? You know what I mean? Like, there are ways you can build that into your schedule that don't feel as daunting or we switch to minutes. So you're running, because 4 miles when you're running slower can just seem like eternity. Sure. But if you do 40 minutes in zone 2, your body doesn't know what 4 miles is. Yeah. It knows 40 minutes. Okay. Right.
I'm a big believer in the minutes versus miles, I think, because then you can go more by effort. Like, I got to finish this 8-mile run. No, you run 60 minutes easy. And if it's
Lee's
7
so
point
good at
whatever,
this.
that's so important, I think. And I'll adjust my workouts in the summer too with my athletes. So it's slower tempo. And then if we're going to run faster, maybe we'll do some 200s sometimes to get some faster stuff. But everything's shorter in the summer.
Yeah,
just
everything.
You gotta adjust for the heat. So if the workouts are a little easier on the harder day, then it's probably okay to get out of zone 2 a little bit if you have to because of the heat and the humidity in your body. It's that trade-off, the hard versus easy.
Tell them what you do when I give you minutes.
So, because I can't not have a goal.
I have to brag about Lee because this is awesome.
So if I have a 40-minute slow run, I remember where I got when I out and back, 20 minutes out, 20 minutes back, right? I remember how far I got, and I'm like, I'm going to go less than that so that I go less distance, so that I'm going slower.
Oh, I love that.
So that every time I'm like, okay, I got to that house, I'm not going to make it to that house in 20 minutes so that I have to turn around before that house. So you get kind of close to it, you start slowing down a little bit.
Great. I thought you were going to say the opposite.
Yeah, that's what most people do, right? She doesn't do it.
Because,
I love it about Lee.
Because I can't not have the goal usually is like, I'm going to run 4 miles or I'm going to run 5 miles. So I had to come up with my own goal, and it was always push yourself to go slower, to not make to that same turnaround point that you did the last time you did a 40-minute run.
And I would also say, if you're struggling with this, pick people. If you're going to follow people that follow 80-20 principle online.
Yes.
Don't follow people that are go hard and go home. Just surround yourself with things that are going to support your goal, right? Don't compare to someone who runs less miles Because here's the thing, like you don't know where they grew up, what their background is. You don't know what they're doing on the side, cross training. You don't know what other people are doing. You don't know how many carbohydrates they eat or how much they sleep. You don't know. So it's silly to compare. Just try to, if you're going to compare yourself, compare it with people that are doing all the same things that you're doing.
And I've noticed that on my timeline that once you start following the people, the dietitians that are telling you, make sure you're eating enough,
Yeah.
then you're the suggestion for other people to follow are people that are telling you eat enough,
Yes.
or the people that are saying run slow and run slow, this amount of time. Once you start following those people, you get suggested other people, and then your timeline is just full of people telling you to eat and run slow, and it's great.
And you really can't argue with heart rate. That's the thing. Like your heart rate is telling you how hard your body is working. Regardless of whether you think you're working hard, your heart is working harder than it should that day. So whatever the variable is, like you could have had too much caffeine. Back on the caffeine.
Right.
Like there's a lot of variables that go into making your heart rate high, but you can't argue with the fact that your body's working too hard.
And your perception of how much you're working is not always accurate.
Not always
Most
accurate,
of the time,
yeah.
not. And that's in Jack Daniels calls them junk miles, and not. Some people used to say, "Oh, LSD, long slow distance, they're all junk miles."
I hear that a lot.
I don't
actually.
agree with that at all.
No, me
The
either.
junk miles are when you're in between zones. So if you're supposed to be running in zone 2 and you're really zone 3, then those are junk miles.
Yeah.
You're not helping yourself. Junk miles in terms of it's going to harm you more than it's going to help you.
Yep. Running too hard are junk miles.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
We like LSD.
Yeah.
yeah.
We love LSD. I mean, not that kind of LSD.
No,
but-
yeah, long, slow distance.
Yeah,
because-
that was the 70s.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what everybody did. I when I was in high school, I graduated high school in 1982. I had kids that I raced against that ran 100 miles a week in high school.
long, slow distance.
Yeah, but you can't, like, honestly, I've told Lee this before. This is the reason I didn't want my kids to do cross country in Florida, because I didn't want them to hate running.
Yeah.
I didn't want them to, I mean, if I'd had Brian as a coach, but we didn't have Brian. So I'm like, I just didn't want them to hate running. And when you get in that habit of you have to run hard all the time, and you see results up front, but then you tank and it's not good.
Or it's not fun, so you stop.
Well,
It's not fun, so
Yeah.
you stop. That's really what it is.
Yep.
And I'm like, told my kids, nope, you're running 10:30 pace with me, guys. Like, that's what we're doing.
That's great.
And they
Yeah,
still,
that's
every
it.
time they come home from college, they
They
still
love
go
to run
Yes.
with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my son still runs. I mean, that
But he had you as a coach. That's not fair.
that's always, and I used to tell the parents, my goal is that these athletes do this sport for the rest of their life, that they love it, because I think it's the best sport.
That's my goal
I think
always,
it's the
too.
best community of people. Everybody is so giving. Even the elites in this sport are approachable. Think about Meb.
Oh, yeah. Mav's
Like, you
great.
meet him once, he'll remember your name. I mean, he's the
Wonderful.
nicest guy, and he's
Yep.
an Olympic champion, right? I
And
mean,
how many sports do you have where you can be on the same start line pretty much?
almost none.
There's like none.
None. I mean,
we get to share
yeah.
the same.
Yeah.
It's so cool. Our sport is so
It
cool.
is. It'd be like you get in a car and you go jump in a NASCAR race.
Yeah.
I mean, so you go on the starting line and Meb's on the starting line with you.
Yeah.
It is fascinating.
Greatest sport.
Yeah, it is. And we want, and that's what I said. I just want, the only thing runners want is more runners.
Yes.
Yes.
To be addicted and
come
to really,
to our side.
Yes.
Yes.
It's not even a dark side. It's a light,
It's a-
bright side.
It is, except when you're walking sometimes in zone 2, it's a little annoying, but that's okay.
When it's 87 degrees and Dupoint's 80, it's
You
not
just
fun.
you just put on your shirt that says, "My coach told me I have to run this slow."
I'm going to have some made for real.
Yeah, that way you feel like this is.
Absolutely.
It's
hey,
kind of
not
like
my
that
fault.
shirt. You know that shirt when people like just are first pregnant and they like gain that little bit of weight and they have a thing
The
on there that
arrow
says,
or the-
an
yeah.
arrow says I'm pregnant. Yeah.
Same thing.
Like, we'll just do the same thing for running.
Yeah.
It'll be perfect.
And you point to the heart. I'm in zone 2.
Yes.
Yes. My heart's strong.
My heart's
Oh,
strong.
we're going to have all kinds of designs.
Yes. All right. Well, Brian and Maria, this has been wonderful. I love zone 2 heart rate training because it is counterintuitive. So we want to try to help people to understand that,
Yeah.
like, if you do this, your heart gets stronger and then you can run all that you want, but your heart has to be strong.
And don't get crazy obsessed with it. Don't, because this is what happens.
'cause
They're like,
there's-
I heard on this podcast, now I got to do everything zone 2. And they get crazy.
Yeah.
It's a tool that you have in your toolbox. And
Yes.
it's an information point, right? Like, it's an information point. Ooh, my body was working a little harder than it should today. I wonder why. Go down the checklist. Did I eat enough? Did I sleep enough? Like, did I run too hard on my track workout yesterday? Like, what did I do? maybe try to adjust it and keep going.
Do better the next time.
Do better the next time. We're not going to be like, oh, I can't do zone 2 every day, so my life is over. It's not.
It's
not
like
over.
you've
It's okay.
heard runners and their
OCD. I don't know where I've heard it before, but
yeah. So we like I said, I needed a goal to run slower. So people need a goal, that they don't to stay in this zone 2, and sometimes they can become obsessed with it. So
I dream of the day when we are all bragging about our easy run pace. That's the day. Like when I get somebody to run easy, I feel like I have won at life. I'm like, yes.
It does. It helps.
100%.
I mean,
It's fabulous for a coach.
Yeah, no, I can remember having those conversations sometimes about my high school kids with my wife. They got it. They finally got it.
Oh.
And I have some people that never get it.
Yep.
Like, that will not check their ego and will not do it. There's nothing I can do for you at that point. Like and then I have a lot of runners that'll be like, I can't hit my track workout. I can't hit, you think I can run faster than I can. I'm like, no, it's because your easy days are so hard. You're too tired to hit that on a track day. If you can't hit we're not wizards. Like there's all a formula. If you can't hit the things that we think you can hit on the track, there's a reason. It's not, it can be a myriad of reasons, but one of them can be you're running too hard on your easy days. And so
probably the first one you should probably check.
That's pretty much the first one.
Yes.
And you are at such a higher risk. Like I have a lot of people that come to my track program that aren't custom clients, and they will like get hurt right away, even though I say, hey, on your easy days, you have to slow down, because they're adding speed work, but they're not adjusting their easy pace. So you can't add speed work and keep your easy pace faster. That's like you're getting injured.
Right.
Yeah.
This is not the
That's a
coach's fault.
Right.
This is you are getting injured.
for injury. Yeah.
So you just really have to be careful of that stuff.
Any final thoughts, Brian?
No, I think
That was my coach's drill.
Yeah,
by the way.
coach's drill.
No,
Yes,
I-
coach's drill.
I love that. No, I think that's so important. You only add one variable at a time. Don't
Yeah.
increase your mileage and don't add speed work.
Yeah, because you don't know what's working.
So you add one thing, you might have to take away a little bit from another thing. You add more mileage, you got to go a little slower. You add a
Yep.
speed workout, that easy day has to be easier.
yeah.
Yeah, there's always an equal and opposite thing that you have to do.
And don't forget about sleep.
Absolutely. Number
Man,
one.
I could talk to Brian Fulham for
I
4
know.
hours.
This has been
on
wonderful. I'm
it.
looking at the time like, oh, we gotta go.
You should get us going about elite athletes. We really like to talk about that
next
too.
one.
Olympic trials coming up. We should have an Olympic trials.
We should have an
Yeah.
Olympic trials
Oh yeah.
podcast. Yes,
Yes.
we should.
Because the person who won the St. Pete half marathon, did
Made
you
the
hear?
Olympic trials, right? In the marathon.
Who was it?
So his name was Derek. His name, first and last name both started with a D, and he crushed the course record. This was on Sunday in the heat. He's from St. Paul, Minnesota, and he came
Wow.
down here to kind of get used to the heat for the marathon.
I bet he got used to it.
And he crushed the course record. He did 1:08:17, 8 minutes before the second runner came through. 8.
Yeah, I saw him on.
Minutes.
I saw him on Saturday. He was like
He was
in the
cruising.
10K. He did the
No.
10K.
Oh, I don't. Did he also do the 10K? I
think
was
he
watching
did.
him in the. I was watching him in the half.
I think he did the 10K too.
He-
Because
he's ready for those
well,
trials in
whoever won the
February.
10K was 10 minutes in front of everybody else. I'm
Oh
like,
my
well,
God.
I'm like, boy, you can slow down. You're not. There's
You're good.
nobody
Right?
behind you.
And the NCAA championships in cross country are this weekend, and a local girl from Eastlake High School
Oh wow.
is the favorite. She runs for the
Oh, cool.
Gators. Her name's Parker Valby, and
Oh,
the
cool.
NCAA championships at University of Virginia on Saturday. Last year, Parker came in second, so hopefully this year the Eastlake girl
Oh, cool.
All right.
can
That's
win the
fine.
NCAA
We will-
championship.
We will come back to this.
Yes. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks so much.
Bye.